Captain Ibrahim Traore, Burkina Faso's enigmatic leader, is a man on a mission. He's not afraid to shake things up. In 2022, he seized power in a coup, becoming one of the world's youngest heads of state at just 34. But Traore is no ordinary leader. He's driven by a powerful ideology inspired by Burkina Faso's revolutionary icon, Thomas Sankara. Sankara, known as Africa's Che Guevara, led Burkina Faso in the 1980s. He championed Pan-Africanism, fought against imperialism, and prioritized social justice. Sankara's legacy looms large over Burkina Faso, and Traore sees himself as following in his footsteps. He's made it clear he wants to break free from the shackles of Western influence and chart a new course for his country. Traore's admiration for Sankara is evident in his policies. He's deeply critical of what he sees as a neocolonialism, the lingering economic and political control exerted by former colonial powers. For Traore, true independence means more than just flags and anthems. It means controlling your own destiny, making your own choices, and prioritizing the needs of your people. Traore's vision for Burkina Faso is rooted in Sankara's ideals of self-reliance and social justice. He wants to see an Africa that's free from external manipulation, an Africa that controls its own resources and charts its own path towards development. Traore wasted no time in putting his words into action. One of his first major moves was to cut military ties with France, the former colonial power that has maintained a significant presence in Burkina Faso and other parts of West Africa. This decision sent shockwaves through the region. For decades, France has positioned itself as a security guarantor in the Sahel region, deploying troops and providing military aid. But Traore sees this as a form of neocolonial control. He argues that France's presence has only exacerbated instability and fueled resentment. By ending the military agreement and expelling French troops, Traore sent a clear message: Burkina Faso is ready to take charge of its own security. But Traore didn't stop there. He's also been building bridges with countries outside the traditional Western sphere of influence. He's strengthened ties with Russia, China, Cuba, and Venezuela, countries that have often been critical of Western foreign policy. This strategic realignment is a clear sign that Traore is serious about reducing Western influence in Burkina Faso. Traore's actions have been met with mixed reactions. Some praise his bold stance against neocolonialism, seeing him as a courageous leader willing to stand up for Africa's interests. Others worry that he's replacing one form of dependency with another, potentially pushing Burkina Faso into the arms of new global powers. Traore's decision to join BRICS, the bloc of emerging economies comprising Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, is perhaps his most audacious move yet. This alliance, formed in 2009, represents a challenge to the traditional Western-dominated global order. BRICS nations are some of the fastest-growing economies in the world, and they're increasingly assertive on the global stage. For Traore, joining BRICS is about more than just economics. It's about aligning Burkina Faso with a group of countries that share his vision of a multipolar world, a world where power is more evenly distributed. It's about finding strength in numbers and challenging the West's dominance in international institutions like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. BRICS offers an alternative model for developing countries. It promotes South-South cooperation, encouraging trade and investment between developing nations. It also offers access to alternative sources of financing for development projects, reducing reliance on Western-controlled institutions. Traore sees BRICS as a platform to amplify Africa's voice on the global stage. He believes that by working together, African nations can break free from the legacy of colonialism and neocolonialism and achieve true economic and political independence. One of the key drivers behind Traore's decision to join BRICS is the promise of economic diversification and development. Burkina Faso, like many African countries, is heavily reliant on the export of raw materials, particularly gold and cotton. This dependence on a narrow range of commodities makes the country vulnerable to fluctuations in global prices and limits its economic growth potential. BRICS membership offers Burkina Faso the opportunity to diversify its economy by attracting investment from other member states. China, in particular, has shown a keen interest in investing in infrastructure projects in Africa. These investments have the potential to create jobs, boost economic growth, and improve living standards. Beyond infrastructure, BRICS membership could open up new markets for Burkina Faso's exports. With a combined population of over 3 billion people, BRICS represents a vast potential market for African goods and services. Increased trade with BRICS nations could help Burkina Faso reduce its trade deficit and create new opportunities for its businesses. However, some critics caution against excessive optimism. They argue that Chinese investment in Africa often comes with strings attached, potentially leading to debt traps and undermining local industries. They also point out that BRICS nations, despite their rhetoric of South-South cooperation, often prioritize their own economic interests. For Traore, joining BRICS is not just about economics, it's also about geopolitics. He sees the bloc as a way to challenge the existing global order, which he believes is unfairly skewed in favor of Western countries. BRICS, with its growing economic and political clout, offers a platform for African nations to have a greater say in international affairs. Historically, African countries have often been relegated to the sidelines of global decision-making. Their voices have been marginalized in international institutions like the United Nations Security Council, where the veto power of the 5 permanent members, all Western powers, effectively limits the influence of other nations. BRICS, on the other hand, operates on the principle of consensus. This means that all member states, regardless of their size or economic might, have an equal say in decision making. This gives African countries a greater opportunity to shape the global agenda and advocate for their interests. Traore believes that a multipolar world where power is more evenly distributed is essential for a more just and equitable global order. He sees BRICS as a key driver of this shift in the global balance of power. While BRICS offers potential benefits for Burkina Faso and other African nations, it also presents certain risks. One of the main concerns is the potential for new dependencies, particularly on China and Russia, the two most powerful members of the bloc. China, with its vast economic resources and growing global influence, is often seen as the dominant force within BRICS. Its Belt and Road Initiative, a massive infrastructure development project spanning Asia, Africa, and Europe, has been met with both praise and criticism. While it has the potential to boost economic growth in developing countries, some critics worry that it could lead to debt traps and give China undue influence. Russia, too, has been actively courting African nations, particularly since the start of the war in Ukraine. Facing Western sanctions, Russia is seeking new markets and allies. It has been offering military aid, investment, and diplomatic support to African countries, including Burkina Faso. Traore's government will need to navigate these new alliances carefully, ensuring that they serve Burkina Faso's interests and do not come at the expense of its sovereignty. Balancing relations with China, Russia, and other BRICS members will be a delicate balancing act. Traore's decision to join BRICS and chart a more independent course for Burkina Faso resonates deeply with many young Africans. Across the continent, there's a growing sense of frustration with the status quo, a feeling that the old ways of doing things are no longer working. Young people in Africa are acutely aware of the challenges facing their continent: poverty, inequality, climate change, and the lingering effects of colonialism. They're also increasingly connected to the rest of the world through social media and other digital platforms, giving them a wider perspective on global affairs. This generation is demanding change. They want leaders who are willing to challenge the established order, leaders who prioritize African interests and sovereignty. They're tired of seeing their continent exploited for its resources. They're tired of being beholden to Western powers, and they're tired of being told what to do. Traore's bold moves, his willingness to break with the past and chart a new course, have made him a symbol of hope for many young Africans. They see in him a leader who understands their frustrations and is willing to fight for a better future. Traore's decision to join BRICS is part of a broader trend in the Sahel region of Africa. Burkina Faso, along with its neighbors Mali and Niger, have formed the Alliance of Sahel States, or ASS. This alliance is a clear sign that these countries are seeking greater regional integration and cooperation to address the common challenges they face. The Sahel is one of the most fragile regions in the world, facing a complex web of challenges, including poverty, climate change, terrorism, and political instability. For decades, Western powers have been involved in the region, providing military aid and development assistance. However, these efforts have often been criticized for being ineffective and counterproductive. The formation of the ASS represents a shift in thinking. These countries are increasingly skeptical of Western intervention and are seeking to take ownership of their own security and development. They believe that by working together, they can create a more stable and prosperous future for the Sahel. The ASS is still in its early stages, but it has the potential to be a game changer for the region. If successful, it could serve as a model for other African countries seeking to forge a more independent path. Captain Traore's bold move to join BRICS is a sign of the times. It reflects a broader trend of African nations seeking alternatives to traditional Western partnerships. As the global balance of power shifts, African countries are becoming more assertive in their foreign policy, seeking to maximize their leverage and advance their own interests. The old colonial order, where African nations were relegated to the role of raw material suppliers and junior partners, is fading into history. A new generation of African leaders is emerging, leaders who are determined to chart their own course and build a more prosperous and equitable future for their people. The road ahead will be challenging. African nations face immense obstacles, from poverty and inequality to climate change and conflict. But There is also a sense of hope and optimism. The continent is brimming with potential, with a young and dynamic population eager to embrace the future. The world is watching as Africa embarks on this new chapter in its history. The choices it makes in the years to come will have profound implications, not just for the continent itself, but for the world as a whole.